Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Lost Lagosians. I'm your host, Brodda Mike. I'm actually recording here from Lagos. I'm visiting on a business trip. There's some things on my mind that I wanted to share with you guys while I'm out here in Eko. It's pretty exciting, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you about these topics while I'm here. One of them being the situation with the roads in Lagos. So, again, if you're new to this podcast, thanks for tuning in. Lost Lagosians is a podcast where we'll cover topics facing Lagosians, Nigerians, and Africans in general that are living outside of Africa. We also discuss some of the challenges that Africans go through, particularly as it relates to immigration and traveling abroad and other issues that comes with living in diaspora. So without further ado, I want to talk to you on this episode about the roads in Lagos. Like, have you ever noticed how bad the roads are in Lagos? It's actually something that deters a lot of people from visiting Lagos, especially those living outside of Lagos. The fact that it takes you too long to get from point A to point B, and also the fact that you have to schedule your trips. So in other words, if you wanted to go out to somewhere, you have to know when you need to go out, because if you go out at the wrong time, it might take you 5 times as much to get to your destination. For starters, the population of Lagos State as of 2022 is 15.3 million people. So that's second just behind Kinshasa in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. The third is Egypt with 10 million. That's Cairo, and Giza is also about 9 million. So if you look at the top 5, the fifth is in Dar es Salaam. That's in Tanzania, and that's just about 5.9 million people. So just again, going back to numbers for Lagos is about 15.3 million people, again, as of 2022. So if you compare that in terms of population, so approximately Lagos is twice the size of Ghana, and Lagos itself is bigger than places like Somalia, which is a country. It's bigger than Zimbabwe, it's bigger than Guinea, Rwanda, Benin, Tunisia, Burundi, Togo, Sierra Leone, Libya, Congo, even Liberia. Just Lagos is bigger than all those countries that I've mentioned. So it's quite a enormous city. Speaking in terms of Nigeria, Lagos is actually about 8% of the population of Nigeria. So some people say it's 10%. Of course, these numbers are they tend to move every year. But if you can imagine that 10% of the country is living in a city that is just 0.4% of the landmass of Nigeria. So Lagos is 0.4% of the landmass of Nigeria. Mind you, a third of Lagos is water. So if you were to do the math, about 0.3% of the landmass of Nigeria, which is Lagos, is harboring about 10% of the nation. So let me pause, because that's a lot of numbers that I'm throwing out. So, and just let that sink in. So you have a country that is 206 million people as of 2022, and approximately, maybe let's say about 10%, more or less, of that population is living in a land that is 0.3%, 0.3% of the country's landmass area. That just gives you the idea of how congested and how packed Lagos is with people. If we stretch that a little bit, based on statistics, for every kilometer in Lagos, there are about 222 cars. The average in Nigeria is 11 cars per kilometer. And if you look at Lagos, only is 222 cars per kilometer. That's about 200% more than the average in the country. Now, if you were to look at the cars per kilometer that I just talked about, the cars per kilometer metric that I'm using just describes how many cars are available for every kilometer of drivable road. So for 1 kilometer of drivable road, this is the number of cars registered according to the Department of Transportation, the Lagos State Department of Transportation. So to get that, you divide the number of cars that are registered by the number of road networks available, and you total that, and that gives you the number of cars per kilometer. So in Lagos, there are 222 cars assigned for every kilometer. Even if you were to stretch out a kilometer on a pen and paper, and then you put cars over them, you find out that 222 cars are more than 1 kilometer. That puts Lagos at number 2 in the world. So globally, in terms of cars per kilometer on the road, Lagos is number 2, only after Monaco. Monaco is 370 cars per kilometer. Singapore is 207. If you go down a little bit more, Germany is only 80 cars per kilometer. The United Kingdom, as small as the UK is, they only have 80 cars per kilometer. Mexico is 71 cars per kilometer. And if you look at places like United States, the US has just 31 cars per kilometers. So these are statistics and numbers that I will link to the show, so you guys can take a look at it for yourself if you're kind of nerdy. I want to dig deep into that. So without making this too complicated, there are two things. There are two things that can readily be done. One being, let's increase the number of drivable roads by building more roads, more flyovers, more bridges, or we could increase the price of registering a car. And I know the Nigerian government has been doing a lot of work to make sure it's harder to bring cars into the country. By making it harder for cars to get registered, we'll make it easier for people to be able to have better roads or better drivable roads or better driving experiences. So if you want to, by correlation, if you want to reduce traffic, reduce the number of cars on the road. And other parts of the world have done this by having car tax, for example. Alternatively, the government can invest in building more roads, which is what people have been clamoring for forever, because the idea of having a car helps with upward mobility economically and financially. So in a growing economy like Lagos's economy, it'd be ideal that people definitely want to have more cars because it makes life better. It's part of the beauties of the 21st century in places like Lagos. While I'm not advocating for one or the other, I'm just reporting the facts that it probably would make sense, in my opinion, for the government to build more roads, because the politicians come in all the time and they promise us good roads, good roads, good roads, better roads, more roads. That would help with the issue at hand. But that's not the focus of the topic for today. What I just want to kind of express to this podcast is the frustration and the 3 hours it took us to get from Moitala Airport to Lekki. And it took about 3 hours just from Lagos to Lekki, which again, it's a very short distance, but because of the traffic, because a lot of people were telling me that, well, because most people go to the island in the morning, then when we were leaving, technically there shouldn't be any traffic. Because the traffic should have died at about 9:10. So just when we hit the road, there shouldn't have been any traffic. So pretty kind of frustrating to be driving in a city that has such a high car density. So very fascinating to see how small Lagos is, and the fact that there are just too many people in Lagos, and also there are too many cars in Lagos. So I did a bit of research, and I wanted to kind of share that with you guys. One of them is partly because of the bad roads. There are a lot of bad roads in Lagos. And if you know the climate very well, there are two seasons. There's a rainy season and a dry season. So the rainy season usually starts around April and it ends around October, November, which it rains a lot. So I've heard the governor of Lagos State once say that bitumen dissolves in water. Bitumen is like the compound they use to make the roads. And so if the government is saying that between April to November there's a lot of rain, what they're saying is that it makes it harder for them to build roads because it's always raining between April and October, November. So such bad roads make it very difficult to move around. Another thing is also the bad road networks. Like Lagos wasn't properly planned. It was just developing as people came in. So, and everybody in the country came down to Lagos. So there was no particular design up until very recently on the island. But for the mainland, it wasn't properly designed. Other things that I notice is, I haven't been here now for a couple of days, is the night markets. There's this scenario where at night, a lot of roads on Lagos turn into market squares, especially on the mainland. Some parts of the island, like Obalende, so people just wait for the night to transact. So you have people bringing out their tents, bringing out their sheds in the night. If you look at places like Oshodi or Balinde, which is on the island, look at the Keja area. I mean, practically those parts of the road network turns into market at night, Yanokwaja. And the idea is that they come out at night. Maybe they have day jobs, I don't know. But in the night, they come out again and they try to sell on the road. So a 3-lane road can easily become a 1-lane road if you are not aware of where you're going, because there are people selling on the road and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I know the government tried a couple of years ago in parts of Lagos to get rid of those hawkers. But again, there was a lot of kickback. But and resistance by the locals because that's their livelihood. There's also the pothole economy, and what that means is that people destroy the roads in certain parts of Nigeria so that cars can slow down and then they can see what they have to sell. So it's not uncommon, particularly traveling out of Lagos State, the Lagos Ibadan Expressway, or going from Lagos to Benin City, for example, or going from Lagos to Benin City, for example, where you see the roads and potholes. Just the locals constantly go and destroy it because they have no source of selling. There's no market for them. And there was nobody will even come to the village to buy stuff because it's not a rest area, for example. So the only way they can do that is to hire the local area boys to go and break the roads. So even though the government is trying to put the new roads in, people are breaking the roads so they can continue to sell. So really, really fascinating to have that kind of mentality whereby the government is trying to move people forward, but people want to be able to sell their stuff, and the only way to sell their stuff is on the road to passengers traveling by. And the easiest way to accomplish that is to break the roads and destroy the roads. The other thing that came to my attention was when I was talking to a friend of mine who told me that if they'd fix the roads, then for urban sprawling areas or areas that are developing, the trucks and the contractors and everybody coming in would damage the road. So think about this, where you have an undeveloped area, a developing area, I'll just say outside of Lagos, so a rural area in Lagos, say parts of Ikorodu, for example, where you have kind of like a village setting, and the government will wait for the place to be fully developed before they bring the roads. And the rationale for that is that if they hadn't done that, then people will come in and they'll damage the road. So usually in the rest of the world, the roads go in first. Then after the road goes in, then development follows the road, because the road is an indication of there's progress coming into this area. Let's follow the federal government plan or the local government plan. But here it's kind of the reverse, because the argument is that if they've done the roads, then and ABCDEFG is building, ABCDEFG houses, the tractors that will come in and the heavy equipment and the machinery that will come in and the load of cement, those will damage the road. So why do we need to build the road if we can wait and have them use the bad road, and when the development is ready, then we can put the road in? So that's kind of a reverse psychology, reverse way of thinking. But I'm just reporting based on talking to people and what they're kind of telling me about that. There's also the theory of waiting for the big man. The theory of waiting for the big man just means someday, if you're lucky, a big man moves next door, and because he's such a big man, he will fix the road for all of you. So that is something that is common in Lagos, whereby you bought your house, but you're praying to God Almighty that the big man shows up and fix the road for you. And those that are now waiting for the big man are waiting and hoping that they live next to a councillor or a government official who will approve their roads to be built, which in a lot of cases, when the big man comes in, he only builds up to his house. Literally, I've seen a lot of houses where there's a construction that stops at a particular point, because that's where the big man's house ends. The other thing I also wanted to point out is that Lagos is below sea level. So doing an underground railway, an underground tunnel, or like the tube in London, or the subway in the USA, in New York City particularly, will be difficult because Lagos is already below sea level. So the way to do this will be something going above sea level. So by that I mean more bridges, or maybe better road networks. But it's pretty hard to do if you see how small the roads of Lagos are. There's this BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit. That's the bus transportation system that carries a lot of people. And the small roads that Lagos already have, they split that road furthermore to allow the BRT to be able to go through. The problem with that is that the BRT does not operate 24/7. So as a matter of fact, I was driving yesterday and the BRT lane was empty. This was around 10 p.m. So because the BRT has a time where they stop working, and it just dawned on me that why not have something like the HOV, the high occupancy vehicle idea, whereby it's between like 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Then also between 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. What that does is it allows the BRT to be usable and passable by other cars. so as to alleviate congestion by other cars. So if there was traffic on other lanes, if you get caught 24/7 on the BRT lane, they will pound your car. So people cannot use the BRT lane because the BRT lane is for BRTs only. But the other times of the day where the BRT is not running, say after 8 p.m., I'm guessing, I don't know for a fact, but late at night, I know the BRT is not 24/7. Those can be, it's possible to allow other vehicles to use that so they can have a timestamp on, okay, BRT, say, I don't know, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That BRT lane is reserved for BRT, and after 7 p.m. up to 7 a.m. the next day, and also weekend hours, is it possible for other people to use that lane? But that's something they don't do. So God help you if you get in the BRT lane at all, ever. So that's also something of concern. The federal government is also not paying attention to this because they believe Lagos State is self-sufficient and it's Lagos's problem. But it's overall affecting the national economy. An engineer friend of mine I was talking to, I believe the day before yesterday, was because I was so frustrated with the road and just not being able to travel, was telling me that one of the rural municipalities in Ikorodu, it's kind of like this small island. They were going to build a bridge to open up and develop that area to allow more roads to come in. It was working for Lagos State government. And the locals rejected the idea because they said they like their fishing and that this would take away their fishing and their culture and they won't be able to have income. Because right now, the only way through to that island is through the ferries, like the boats. So if you wanted to go, you get on a boat and there's like 4 people or 6 max, that can get on the boat. And there's someone who's from the local who's paying taxes to the Oba or whoever. So if they brought a bridge, their thought process was, this is not going to make sense. This would kill all our fishermen. This would kill the young kids doing the ferry. So again, it makes you wondering, in the 21st century, as we're trying to progress, this is 2022, and Lagos is supposed to be one of those big cities in Africa, and it is quite in its own right within the giant of Africa, that people will not allow development to go through because they have local vested interest. Another thing I think they could look into is the odd and even car management. I've been to Shenzhen where they do that. So it'd be something like the last number of your car. If it's odd, it's going to be allowed to be out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If it's even, it's going to be allowed to be out every day of the week. So that can kind of limit and curb the number of cars. In the UK, we're all familiar with their taxes and how hard it is to even own a car, and how expensive it is to own a car, I should say. So, but here, like, nobody cares. You just drive, and the roads are limited. So you driving from point A to point B, it takes 3 hours to go anywhere, and you can't really move until you have to move with time. It's really, really something to experience if you haven't already. That's beside the nonchalant attitude of the last man, those guys who control the roads, who help control the roads. So by that I mean, in the evening there are different class of police officers or Lagos State transportation officers that come out, and they just want to make a quick buck. So in the evening, some police officers come out. It's not really about the traffic. They are just there to stop cars. So you're driving, they'll stop you. I'm driving in Lagos right now, and I've been stopped a few times. So they'll stop you, and it's just, what do you have for us? What can you give? What do you get for boys? What do you have for boys? And it's just, give us money. So with that, they keep stopping people. I was also stopped in the morning one time taking a friend to the airport a couple of days ago as well, and he was asking for identity card. So it's just in the morning because my friend lives at Lekki. Trying to get out of Lekki is a nightmare in the morning, Monday through Friday. So his flight was at 7:30, and we had to leave at 5 a.m. Granted, on any other day, it should probably be a 30 minutes drive, maybe 45 if there's no traffic. But and my friend was telling me if we hadn't gone out by 5:20, we'll miss his flight at 7:30. So small island, small place, but just the traffic is horrendous. So the officer pulled us over and was asking about our identity card. And my friend was like, I'm not giving you my ID card. Like, what do you need it for? So once he realized he was learned and he knew the law, he was like, okay, you guys can go. So it's just the police and the transportation officers, they're not making things easier by just having random checkpoints, random stops, hampering traffic. Typically, in the Western world, once there's traffic, you don't see officers stopping people in the middle of the traffic because they are concerned about traffic. But in Lagos, particularly, they don't care whether there's traffic or not. In fact, they add more to traffic in certain situations. Now, on top of all of this, one thing I've not spoken about at all yet is the lawlessness and the recklessness and the aggressive driving considered to be the driving standard of Lagos. So there's no speed limits. Of course, speed limits are posted, but nobody obeys them. There's no ability to tow trucks or tow cars. So I've encountered a couple of instances where people would just stop in the middle of the road because their cars were heating and they're trying to fix it there. So imagine how much that adds to the chaos already. So and there's nobody that does anything about it. One instant I came out of the car and I actually went and it was a lorry that had broken down, which to begin with was not roadworthy at all. And there was the last man there just like doing nothing, just trying to talk to other people, his friends that were in the area. So it's just like nobody cares. So part of that is also the insurance. People don't have insurance all the times. So if you get rear-ended or if somebody hits you, you're on your own. There's no towing system like I talked about. So if a car had stalled on the way, it will take hours for the car to be moved out of the way. Another problem is the traffic lights, the red, yellow, green traffic lights. Those lights, a lot of them don't work, partly because they are either broken or there's no power. That means there's no light. And when there's power, the ones that work are only obeyed at different times of the day where there's a officer there present to arrest them. But if there's no officer present, people just go. So even if it's red, you just look around and you just keep going. So people don't even obey the traffic lights when they're walking, which is rare. So a lot of times traffic lights don't work, and when they work, they're not obeyed unless there's an officer standing there to arrest whoever does not obey. So all that just adds to the complications of driving. Now, a way out is to hire your driver, which a lot of people do. They get their personal drivers, and the driver deals with all that stress while they get work done while driving. Very, very interesting place called Lagos and driving in Lagos. So I guess overall, this is kind of a bit of a long rant. For anyone who's listening, if you're in power, I think you can help us have the government do something about the road situation. As I mentioned earlier, Lagos is number 2 in the world with 222 cars per kilometer. Granted, the average in Nigeria is just 11. So, small city with lots of people. Another thing I was talking to someone about was, what if the federal government incentivized relocation to other parts of the country, whereby other parts of Lagos, like Ekpe, or just Ogun State, just nearby, whereby the government can give like cheaper housing to people. People will move if they're incentivized. But unfortunately, that's not something that is at the heart of Nigerian government right now, helping people with the traffic situation. More recently, as of the last week or two, it's been with the fuel scarcity. So I'm recording this just at the end of February 2022. There's a fuel shortage and there's just no fuel. So I've had to buy fuel at the black market a few times because with the long lines, that actually makes traffic longer. That makes traffic worse because the 2 lanes that you already have, one of the 2 lanes is taken by people in queue for petrol at the petrol station. And this is something that takes all day. Some people wake up at 5 in the morning, spend the whole day till 10 p.m. trying to buy petrol in a nation that has abundance of petrol. So what that ultimately does is that the roads become more congested because people are fighting, trying to, get into the filling station. And then there's a long traffic in queue taking half of the road. So it just becomes like a total nightmare. Other ways of achieving this would be rationing based on like I talked about, the license plates. And why is there even shortage of petrol in Nigeria? Like, it makes no sense at all. So, thank you for listening. This is not usually what this podcast is about. Occasionally we have one-off episodes like this, but I happen to be in Nigeria and I just wanted to use this avenue to kind of share this with those of you that are listening. If you know someone is in power, please share with them. Please, if you're not already subscribed, Subscribe to our podcast wherever you get a podcast. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter at Lost Lagosians, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ekoni Baje.